Welcome to the Executive Woman Podcast, Women Changing the Game. I'm your host, Dr. Sheila Robinson, and our mission is to empower women in business, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Each week, we bring you conversations with trailblazing executives. I just love it. Innovative entrepreneurs and influential leaders who are breaking barriers and reshaping the business landscape. And through these discussions, we aim to provide you with the tools, strategies, and motivation to advance your career, grow your business, and make a lasting impact in whatever field or industry you find yourself in. Whether you are an aspiring leader, a seasoned executive, or somewhere in between, this podcast is dedicated to you, to supporting your professional journey and fostering a community of empowered women who lift each other up. Today's episode is Amplifying Women's Leadership with Elisa Parker. I am so excited. Each time we bring you someone great like Elisa, I want to give her a fitting introduction, but I want to share with you that Elisa is a visionary leader in the realm of gender equity and social justice. She is the founder of C. Do. She shares her journey, insights, and strategies for amplifying women's leadership and closing the leadership gap. She connects people through the power of story, partnership, and solutions to amplify women's leadership and close that gender gap. She has served as the founder of Cutting Edge Organizations and Programs, a nationally acclaimed radio host. She's going to shame me today. A coalition builder, a strategist, and a visionary for equity and social justice. She currently oversees Equal Voice, Equal Future, a new gender justice media hub championed by the Fund for Women's Equality. We love women's equality, and its sister organization, the ERA Coalition. Now, she has hosts of award-winning programs, the C. Do, co-founder and co-director of 50 Women Can Change the World in Media and Entertainment, Indivisible Women, and 100 Women Change Hollywood. She has lots of other notable works like TEDx Grass Valley, Raising Jane, and C. Do Media Lounge. I'm going to let Elisa come on and tell us a little bit about herself and introduce yourself, our listeners, and share with us an overview of the programs and your initiatives that you have founded.
Hi, Dr. Sheila. First, thank you so much for having me on with you. I am just in deep gratitude to be here and finally connect with you. I know we both share the love of Dr. Nancy O'Reilly. I'm thrilled to be part of her new book. And I know that you are part of that in addition to so many other extraordinary women. So first, just thanks for being here. I think a lot of us are showing up right now because we are in a transition of moving and redefining power and feminist leadership, right? And how we're showing up for each other, and also, of course, ourselves. And all the work, and thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. My passion really is around its collaboration and community and coalition building and being intentional with that, and how we show up in the most effective, passionate, heartfelt way in that, and in true sisterhood. And whether that's been through political endeavors, or as you mentioned with C. Do, bringing women together to share their voices and stories. You know, it all is for this greater good of how do we all show up as the best way possible, right? And what we came here to do. We all have unique talents and passions, and I love to help create space to do that, including being here with you right now. So thank you so much, Dr. Sheila.
Well, Elisa, how these programs, how do you think they have impacted women's leadership and closed the gender gap in their respective fields? And you want to give us any examples of any success stories, anything that you want to share with us on your program's impact?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting, Dr. Sheila. I think in the work that we do, especially in diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Everyone wants to have, they want quantitative data, right? Give us numbers. What does that look like? I mean, and honestly, yes, in gender equity, for sure, there are specifics we can look at with like pay equity, for example, right? So much of this too, I think, is contingent on the relationships that we have, right? And so many of all of the programs that I've been invested in and have created and co-created, number one, yes, we focus on intention and strategy and activating into action. But the number one is the relationships that we hold, because honestly, We're dealing with a lot right now, and we have been for a very long time, and that is what we need to sustain this work. And so a good example of that is a couple ones. Right after our former president was elected, and we had the Women's March. I've been working in this arena for a very long time. You mentioned with C. Jane Doe. So I came back to then my little town. I now live in Brooklyn, but I lived in this little town for 20 years, very active, non-complacent community, very 50-50 on the political spectrum. I return and everyone's like, what are we going to do? How do we combat what seems so intense and dire, and we're seeing our rights stripped away? So a group of us ended up forming what's now known as Indivisible Women. And it ended up being one of the largest indivisible groups in the country. So it went from like 300 women gathering to 600 to 800 women in our little town, mind you. And yes, it was imperative that we campaigned, and we had all kinds of different strategic objectives and bringing in different people running for office and supporting them. But I'll tell you, and I still have long-standing relationships, the key part that we always focused on is you can't be the sole goose. You can't be the only one. Like, you don't have to be in on this on your own. And what we focused on was really connecting with each other. And that was number one. I still have long-term friendships. One of my favorite authors, Terry Tempest Williams, she talks about the flight of the Canadian geese. And I mean, I've seen them lately here in Brooklyn Bridge Park where they're gathering, their little goslings are there. Well, they're in a flock. They go together. And the lead goose, she's charting her path to go thousands of miles, and her side wing geese are there honking her on, cheering her on. When she gets tired, she pulls back and another goose takes the lead. And to me, that is such a wonderful example of what we strove to do in Indivisible Women and what feminist leadership's all about. And another great story is 50 Women Can Change the World in Media and Entertainment, which my good friend and colleague Tabby Biddle and I co-created. Hollywood, like so many other power-driven industries, it's talk about the lack of gender equity. And we felt like we need to shift this, like creating systemic change in this industry is so necessary. So we created 50 Women Can Change the World in Media and Entertainment. We had a cohort of women, diverse, and in all areas, directors, writers, producers, filmmakers, women working below the line. We brought them all together, and it was a 6-month program where we worked with them on redefining power and showing up with each other and providing a space for them to connect with each other and feel supported and show up for each other. And for some of them, Dr. Sheila, I was even most surprised, like the women who've been in executive leadership, C-suite women for their whole life were like, I need to do this. And second, like, this is the first time I've been able to remove my armor and feel like I could show up in my true way and feel supported in that. And so that sisterhood it's still going strong. They're now like producing films for each other. They've created production companies. Dr. Nicole Haggard, who I don't know if you've spoken with, but Dr. Nancy was just interviewing Dr. Nicole of Center for Advancement of Women's Leadership. She and 2 other women created See Me, which was all focused on, diversity in entertainment and how women are perceived in the film. I mean, so I could go on with stories and examples of that. That's what gets me going, is the coalition part and how we show up with each other.
Those are excellent examples of your impact through your work. And listeners, I love where she said, you don't have to do this alone. And I think that if we apply that in our lives more and use the examples of the geese story, but that's the thing with women. We feel like we have to do it all, and we are shamed at asking for help or even appearing that we need help. And that is why it is such a huge issue with work-life balance. And when I am talking to women, I am saying we're not utilizing our resources. I would rather give up a year of entertainment for my housekeeper, like something that small, and it's not very expensive. We assume that we cannot utilize resources because we can't even afford it or it's not going to work out. But even our resources are ways that we as women can step back and let somebody else step up front and guide the way so that we can relieve ourselves. So thank you for sharing that we do not have to do this alone. I'm fascinated about your career in radio. Of course, I love media, every part of it. And it's no wonder that you have a love for the power of storytelling and your partnership. And so I want to ask you a couple of questions about how the role of storytelling in driving social change empowers women.
Such a great question, Dr. Sheila. I mean, stories shape our lives. Stories shape our culture. Stories are sacred. And, when I first started CJ Do, and at the time my daughters, who are now 18 and 21, were little. And I was in a position, there weren't a lot of platforms out there then for women's voices. This is like over 12, 14 years ago. And I asked what everyone did, where it's like, okay, how am I going to show up on my passion? If not me, then who? If not me, then who? And why aren't we hearing the stories of everyday women? Like, we are all amazing and we are all heroes of and in our own lives. We are all heroes. We've all overcome obstacles. We have goals and intentions for ourselves, whether that's to live and create the best life for your children, the best, like you said, the Wonder Woman theory. Oh my gosh, right? Like, I had to throw away my cape at some point and just say, like, we have to ask for help. And can we do it all? I mean, we could do the best we can, but stories are what shapes everything. And I'm telling the beautiful part, and I've had the gift now of connecting with probably hundreds of women through story. And I love to be like a connector. I love connecting each other, but that was really driven through the gift of story, because I connected with these phenomenal women who might be viewed as everyday women that just blossomed into incredible. Not only was I like hearing about, my friend, for example, Catherine Gray, who just created a new show called Show Her the Money. She has an incredible podcast called Invest in Her and She Angels. I just connected her with Dr. Nancy. Right. I mean, and then Catherine just connected me with this other woman who's making this play. Like, it creates ripples. Stories create ripples. Here we are together, right? We're here and there's a book that we are going to be part of and an experience. Yeah. That's stories. Those are storytelling. It's everything to me. And it really is what I think is the core of what holds us together, right? And it's also what creates us, enables us to feel connected with each other, right? Empathy, a sense of belonging. If we don't have that agency, then it can feel pretty daunting.
Well, I tell you what, it's so wonderful to hear those feel-good words. The things that you just share, they're feel good. It's, we constantly hear so many bad news through the media that it is so wonderful and inspiring to hear feel good words. So thank you for that, because I hope my listeners are as inspired as I am, because I have been publishing a print magazine on women's leadership for the last 19 years. And I remember someone telling me that print is dead and you need to go digital and nobody's reading magazines. But I have a 27-year-old daughter who just on vacation had a stack of magazines. She also had her whatever you call them, muffs on, her earphones on. And she had maybe she had the TV on. They are multimedia.
Yes.
It's not that generations that anything is gone. And the reason that this women's leadership publication is so important to continue and to navigate and overcome and continue to innovate, to keep it in the market, is exactly what you just said about we got to keep telling stories.
Yes.
Because telling stories keeps us human, keeping us visible so that we can see women are running P&Ls, women are running global teams, women are board ready. If we don't tell these stories and keep ourselves visible and amplify our voices, then we're in trouble.
It's true.
And so
it's true.
You've just inspired me to continue my work in media. So let's talk more about
keep doing it. Well, I was going to say also, I mean, and so I'm deep gratitude for, when I came from San Francisco to this little town in Northern California, we have a public community radio station, nationally acclaimed. And I became part of that family at KVMR. And it really was a launch pad for See Jane Do. And KVMR, which focused on storytelling, where I had a program, both a primetime music program and See Jane Do, it was the thread of the community. That's how we learned about each other. It's how we kept connected when there were, during the pandemic, during snowstorms, during power outages, events. I mean, it is the heart of the community. And so I think we all hold that as media makers, right? And media mavens like yourself. And having a publication like that, not only is it archived, then like you said, it enables us to see what's possible for ourselves, right? What's possible for ourselves. Now, the other part of storytelling is we also have an opportunity to make things up and make up what we haven't seen before. And we're also living through those times where imagination gets to, right? And some of the things that are really challenging right now in situations, those were made up too. So we have an opportunity now where we're needed more than ever. And we have an opportunity to create those stories that can create a positive shift. We do have that.
Where they are trusted.
100%.
We have the opportunity to create trusted media. And that is one thing that my team, we are committed to, the integrity and the trust for our readers and listeners.
Yes.
So I want to talk more about you. What are you doing now? The equal voice, equal future, So let's talk a little bit about your current project and your goals for equal voice, equal future.
Well, disclaimer. So when I first came on board with the ERA Coalition, which is doing phenomenal work to ensure that the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, is published. It's only taken 100 years. We've said 100 years, not one more, because it is the 100th anniversary of when the ERA was introduced into Congress, if you can believe that.
Yes.
It's been ratified, So it's been an honor to be part of that team. And when I initially came on, I was overseeing Equal Voice, Equal Future, which really was to amplify underrepresented voices, especially young women, and doing that in a way where it was providing them with the training and the tools, and also collaborating with other organizations who were training young women to tell their story and connecting them with each other, and with the lens of equality. So the question was to all these groups like Global Girl Media and Representation Project, right? Like, what does equality mean to you? That was the question. And I often ask my guests that too. What does equality mean to you? And they came up with these incredible responses through podcasts, visuals, essays, collages, videos. So that was the beginning. I mean, my goal really, Dr. Sheila, is to, in gender equity, certainly amplifying the ERA so that it's on the tip of our tongues and everybody's talking about it, right? It's in mainstream media. So I've been part of that with the coalition and helping to amplify that. More recently, it was really convening our over 300 partners together who are leaders of the gender equality movement to, again, be connected, co-support each other, share resources, and strategize on, number one, having the ERA published. But number two, how do we hold that up? And number three, we get to decide what that's going to look like. We get to help shape what equality means. We get to help shape, once it's been published in the Constitution, of what this means for all of us, ensuring that everyone is included in that. In my present moment, I've actually just recently moved on from the coalition, but they continue to be a partner.
Absolutely.
I'm actually, one of my joys in that was, and after the pandemic, was reconnecting with former partners that I'd worked with before. And I was able to do that with the coalition. And one of them, also connected to all of us here, and is going to be in the book, is Tiffany Schlein, who's a sister. She is the founder of the Webby Awards, artist, filmmaker, activist. It's a wonderful story because we had connected years ago with do you remember 50/50 Day, that global campaign?
No, but I'm very familiar with the Webby Awards.
Okay. We'll everyone check out 50/50 Day, because it was a global campaign about, as women, we're not operating in a vacuum. Like, we're on the shoulders of so many other extraordinary women and allies who've supported this movement. So Tiffany reconnected she was doing this incredible art monument where it's a fallen tree. And on the tree rings, you see the tree rings, the age of the tree. She made a feminist timeline for that. And she launched it on the National Mall in DC. Dr. Nancy was part of that. And then we brought on the coalition as a partner. And it was a 4-day extraordinary art activation and mobilization. Tiffany and I are now working on a mobilization and art activation, especially voter mobilization for equality. We're going to be producing and hosting this in New York on September 21st. We're bringing in all of our like-minded partners to be part of this. Hopefully Suffs, the musical cast, will lead the way with their song Keep Marching, which is a new Tony Award-winning Broadway play. And we're excited. It's going to be an all-day event, and in the wonder of what amazing things will come of that. So that's what I'm focusing on right now, in addition to whatever the next big thing will be.
Congratulations. Yes, your plate is full.
Yes.
How amazing. That is very amazing. At a time where there's so much going on across industries and women who are doing very similar work that you are doing. Would you share some practical advice for any women leaders that are doing similar work, how they can implement strategies in their own organizations and continue to be uplifted, to think positive? Because it seems like every time we go 2 steps forward, something happens and it pushes us 5 steps backwards.
Yeah, I know. And it's a lot, isn't it? Sometimes just being we would call them an Indivisible Women, like persisters, just being persistent and resilient. I think, for me personally, Dr. Sheila, the number one part too is, how do I continue to show up in this in joy and in my own passion and the skills and talents I'm born with? So I think for any of us, it's really just getting clear with those, because we have it, and it's actualizing that, right? So you already have everything you need to flourish and succeed. And then the second part is, again, aligning with the champions who believe in you and see you for that. And this is part of my chapter in Dr. Nancy's book. And Tabby Biddle and I, we were in the process right before the pandemic of creating a new initiative called Show Up for Her. And Show Up for Her is really about showing up for each other, and it's about showing up for yourself. And I know when we're having a difficult day, sometimes it can feel challenging to do that for ourselves, right? When we show up for each other, and I'll give you an example. So, for example, we're going to see each other in DC for the book launch,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So
yes.
A great way of showing up for her. And as women, we have a hard time sometimes of doing this, being full of ourselves, like we're full of so many things. So being full and being able to speak to that, sometimes it's hard for us to say, hey, I'm Elisa Parker, So the practice and Show Up for Her is, here we are in DC. And I could say, and I'm introducing you to Tiffany Schlane. I could be like, have you met Dr. Sheila Robinson? She's amazing. Did you know for almost over 20 years, she's been producing this incredible publication highlighting women? Did you know that she is a champion, Fortune 500 woman acknowledged for her work in diversity, equity, inclusion? You should know her, Tiffany, because I see some intersection of the work you're doing. And Tiffany, and right? So when you show up for someone else in that way, I'm also acknowledging the same courage and those beautiful attributes I see in myself. So we're activating that muscle. It's an activation of that muscle, right?
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that's just it's such an easy, and especially when you're in networking events, or you're feeling nervous, or you don't know what place you have, is this, I don't even really want to talk about the imposter syndrome anymore, but when we start having our own personal doubts, you're like, you know what, I know how to put into practice is, I love Dr. Nicole Haggard, and I'm going to introduce her. And then all of a sudden it's reciprocated. It's the ripples. So that's one of my favorite things that I could recommend. And then, as far as strategizing and strategizing and creating action. I mean, isn't it more fun to collaborate with each other and have shared vision?
Yeah.
Right?
You
Isn't
know,
that powerful?
it's powerful. And, I'm smiling because you reek of a purposeful leadership. That's what I think about when you talk about the joy in your work. It's because you are doing work that's purposeful to you. You are a purposeful leader. And it is so amazing. And I think that we all can learn from that, listeners, that we can find more joy in our lives and in our work when we're doing work that means something to us, that brings value to us, that's rewarding to us, and so that we can keep that joy that Elisa is talking about. Another thing I hear from you, which is so amazing, when I was doing my research to get my doctorate, I interviewed a C-suite leader, and they said to me, I didn't even realize that I was a leader. And to the people that I was leading, their success was more important than mine. So can you remember when we were in our careers early on and we were thinking about, well, my next promotion, but I can hear it in your voice that you are so concerned about helping the women that you are introducing. That is true leadership, when the people around you, their success is as important or more than yours.
Right.
And we thank you for that.
Thank
We
you.
thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
And we celebrate you. We're nearing the end of our time together. We could talk all
We
day.
could talk all
but
day.
I want to talk about some fun stuff.
Okay.
You have such an amazing career of purposeful leadership, and you've had opportunity to interview so many amazing women and leaders, women and men. Could you share with our listeners some of the most memorable interviews that you've had?
That's a really great question. I know.
And conversations, anything that has shaped you. I think I know you probably know Gina Davis,
I had
Gloria
Gina Davis,
Steinem.
Gloria Steinem. So when I first started, my Gloria Steinem story, when I first started See Jane Do. And sometimes, it's like you're channeling something and you start writing, you wake up late at night and you're like, I need to do this. You start visualizing. So like, number one, don't let that stop and think, is this possible? I was like, oh my gosh, See Jane Do. I'm going to be doing this all across the country, and time's not linear. So it's fun to see things happen later. So when I first started it, I saw Gloria Steinem was going to be at this event in Berkeley, and I was like, I need to go. And I remember when I asked her to sit down, we sat down for like an hour in a classroom, her and I sharing stories. And I remember what she said to me is like, do what you're supposed to do, and I will help you. And I will help you. And it was so wonderful. Fast forward to see her. She's 90 years old now. To see her, we had a recent event, ERA Advocacy Night at Stuff's the Musical, and we were honoring Gloria Steinem with that. So she's such a champion. And that's the thing.
Amazing
Everyone's
champion.
so humble. Okay, another one of my favorites recently is Dolores Huerta, talking about other legends, who's 94 years old. And Dolores she's such a beautiful soul, humble, and in her power. I recently was featuring her and interviewing her at a convening we had a couple months ago. And it was an intimate group. So I had the whole group. I said, you know what? We're going to circle up. Let's circle up instead of like having everyone around in these tables. So we circled up, and Dolores was sharing. I asked her, do you remember as an activist what your first moment was? Like your first gathering? She's like, yes, I do. It was kind of like this. It was a small group. It was like Tupperware parties is what we were having. And it was about getting everyone engaged in the community, in the neighborhood. And I was like, oh my gosh, what we're doing right now is like Tupperware parties.
Yes.
Like, let's seal the deal. We're going to do Tupperware. Let's do Tupperware parties. So those are two extraordinary women that people know, just even the everyday women, and how they've become like near and dear friends of mine that I love. And then seeing them connect with people I love, like that's the best thing too. That's the best thing.
And Madeline, I know Madeline very well from Gina Davis Group.
Madeline DeNono?
Yes, she's from Asheville, North Carolina, and I've actually been invited to events. I may have ran into you at several of the events that I was able to attend as a guest of Madeline. She and I are on an advisory board together. So I know the incredible work that you all are doing with C. Jane.
And
Thank you for that.
Madeline is amazing too. Madeline is someone that will,
Excellent.
you know, in the various projects and initiatives I've done, Madeline's always been one to say, "What do you need? I'm there. I'll support. I'm a partner."
She is outstanding.
It's
She is
interesting
outstanding.
because when I created C. Jane Do, that was right around the same time that Gina Davis was creating C. Jane. And of course,
Yes.
as life has it, I was doing a media lounge for what was then known as the White House Project, and now it's Vote Run Lead, and in New York. And of course, Gina was on their board. So of course we
Yes.
met right away and and we did feature her on there. And that's when you know you're also in sync. Like how ideas are they our own, or are they all out there and it's up to us to say, am I going to claim that and make something happen with it? You know, and the collaboration that
C.
exists.
Jane Do and C. Jane are two different organizations.
things.
I thought maybe C. Jane Do was a part of that because I know that you know them,
Yes.
but it's separate.
Two different things.
Well, like you
Two
said,
different
it's
things.
still all wonderful.
And we've
We're
all partnered.
trying to get. That's outstanding. That's outstanding. So I am going to ask you to have the final words as
Okay.
I'm closing out with our listeners. So think about what message you want to leave with our listeners today, because this brings us to the end of our time together. It's been so amazing, Elisa. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences with us. Your journey and dedication is so empowering and truly inspiring, especially to me at a time where I really need to hear it. And to our listeners, we hope you found this conversation as enlightening as we did. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your support helps us continue bringing valuable discussions to you like this. Also, as I said, I always like to have love for my special guests to have the last words. As you do share your last words, Elisa, please share with our listeners where they can follow you and where they can find out about the great work you are doing.
Thank you so much. And first, thank you, Dr. Sheila, for having me on your program today. It's been such an honor, and I can't wait to connect with you in person in DC for the book launch. So my message to all the extraordinary individuals who are joining us right now, and we'll be listening to this possibly later, is, we're living in chaotic times right now, right? And chaos, but chaos is really the example of like a beautiful star being born, right? The chaos creates these beautiful stars, and we are stardust. Like, we are made for these times. You have everything you need right now, and you're extraordinary. And I know for myself, I have gone through many rebirths. And it's never a spiraling circle. It's spiraling up. So everything I've learned, and believe me, having mistakes and failures and all of this, I am grateful for it. It's brought me to where I am today. And so it's just being present with that and knowing, like, after the pandemic, when we thought, many of us, like, what now? Where is my life leading to now? It's been beautiful to dream up new possibilities and know that I have your back and I'm here for you. And there are many others that do as well. And we're all going to show up for each other, and you got this, and it's wild times, but here we are. We made a point to be here, right? And we have everything we need to do that. So, and you're not in it alone. So thank you so much, Dr. Sheila, because it's great to be here in sisterhood with you.
Thank you so much, Elisa Parker. And listeners, you heard what she said. You got this. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you on our next podcast.